Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Um, my name is SaraChieco, and I am with Presence. We are a digital product development company, which basically means that we build custom software for anybody who comes to us and needs it. Um, and so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. And we'll talk a little bit about the platform that we'll build, and then we'll have some time for questions. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, so if people want access to the deck later, I know Catherine has a copy of it, so you're welcome to. So who we are. So my name is SaraChieco. I am the Director of Technology at Presence for our Social Impact Business Unit. So Presence does a lot of just general commercial work, and then we have a business unit dedicated to social impact work, which means that we work exclusively with nonprofits. I personally have been doing nonprofit technology consulting since 2007. And I've been building custom software for nonprofits since then, predominantly on the Salesforce platform. So our business unit does create custom software for nonprofits that are not built on Salesforce, but I would say that at this point of time, about 90% of our work is on the Salesforce platform, just because of all of the benefits that it offers to nonprofits and for-profits alike, but specifically nonprofits have tens of thousands of nonprofit users in their community of practice, and they give really, really deep discounts, and out of the box you get a platform that really has a lot to it before you've even started using it. So there's a lot out of the box that you can do. So it's become a platform that we predominantly build on. Personally, I have come into this through the software engineering side. I was a senior software engineer and technical lead for many, many years. And then I realized that the part that I really like is being able to talk to the nonprofits and determine what they need and design their software for them. So I kind of came out of software engineering and into business analysis, as we call it, and technical architecture. I have a master's in computer science from the University of Oregon. I have a math degree from Wesleyan. I am definitely on the technology side, but I have not been a software engineer for a number of years now. I focus on running the business unit and the quality of all of our delivery. Those are my big things that I focus on these days. These are just some other people on our team who would be potentially working on this project. We have a really talented team. We only have onshore senior resources, and so everybody that would be working on this project is extremely talented. So what we do, so I talked a little bit about it already. So Presence as a whole works in product development. So whether it's Salesforce or whether it's mobile and web or virtual reality or augmented reality or AI and machine learning, we kind of work across the spectrum. Presence Social Impact really focuses these days on Salesforce.com, and we also do some mobile and web development as well. We are an impact partner of Salesforce.org, which is kind of like the mid-tier partner. And we have a lot, like I said, we have a lot of really senior resources. We've been working on these projects for a really long time. We have a lot of services experience. We have a lot of domain experience with Salesforce. And this is just a partial client list of ours for all of the people that we work with. So we're in a really unique position at Presence. Our social impact department is small. We are intentionally a smaller boutique firm. We have about 12 people on our team, yet we do really large enterprise projects. You know, the companies that we compete against have 500, 700 people on their teams, yet we win a lot of those a lot of those bids because people are looking to have an experience with a team that's going to be dedicated to them and that's going to really take the time to work with them and understand their business case. They're not just going to be assigned to a floating, group of, say, 15 people at any given time. And so we play in the enterprise software space. So we build really complex systems for people, which is our bread and butter, which we love to do, which I personally have been doing for 12 years now. So we have a lot of accreditors that we work with because accreditation is an incredibly complex business process, and we love complex business processes. So we work with a lot of higher ed accreditors. We have health and human service accreditors. We do a lot of ed technology work, education technology. We've built a lot of really large systems. If you've ever applied for financial aid for your children for K-12 schools, you might have used the platform that we built for school and student services for NAIS. So we have a lot of really big platforms that we've built, and this would be another really complex platform, which is what we love to do. These are just other people that we have worked with. I will skip that. I'm not going to go through the case studies right now, but we have them if you're interested in them. And then how we work. So the most important thing we found is to get the software right before we've even built the software, is to understand in detail what the business requirements are and how we're going to translate those into the solution design before we build anything. And then when you get to the implementation piece of the project, you've ironed out most of the kinks already before you've gotten to that point. So that's what we try to do. So this is just to say that these are the kind of steps that we go through in our process. We do a kickoff meeting that involves all the stakeholders so that everybody is on the same page and we're all in agreement on the kind of scope of the project and the time frame. We go through discovery, which is the act of interviewing all of the business users and the stakeholders and really understanding at depth. And they have a lot of documentation already, which is great. So it's really understanding in depth, what their existing platform does, what they want it to do, what are the pain points of the existing system, what is working well, and then in the solution architecture phase, which comes next, we really that's where we take what we know about the requirements and we apply them to the system, and we say, this is how we're going to design the system. These are the specs for building it. And then the implementation phase is where we build it and we perform the quality assurance on it to make sure that it's running properly. And kind of in parallel to that, we do a data migration, and then training and support comes at the end of it. So we train people before we go live, and then we do whatever documentation is necessary for that go live, and then we do ongoing support thereafter. So this is just to show what I just was talking about, where we basically have the different stages of the project, and this might make it look like it's incredibly sequential, which it is in some ways, but as we're doing the discovery and the solution architecture and the implementation, there are numerous kind of gateways along the way where we do a scoping exercise to make sure that the prioritized list of requirements that we have is still accurate. And the whole goal of how we do our work, so these might not be terms you're familiar with, but a lot of people ask, do you do agile development? Do you do waterfall development? And our answer is that we kind of have picked what we like best of a lot of different software development methodologies. And we've been fine-honing this process for over 10 years now. And so our main goal is to be as adaptable as possible and to be as flexible as possible. Because requirements, no matter how long you've had your platform for, no matter how much you think you are 100% certain of what you want, there will be changing requirements that come during the course of a software project. And so our process reacts to that. Our process is basically saying we understand that we are not going to be 100% at the beginning, and so we are going to lay out this entire process so that, you know, 6 months down the road, when you say, oh my gosh, we forgot this thing, or we realize this isn't going to work and we need this different thing, that we can say, that's great. We already have a framework to incorporate new requirements in and to understand how that affects the priorities of the other requirements and how that affects the timeline and or budget. So that's basically our main goal in our process, is to adapt to the changing needs that will come up during a software development process. Because if you kind of make it firm at the beginning and then you say this is what we're developing, it is not going to be what the client needs at the end of the process. So that's our whole goal. I know we have questions coming up in a very short while, but I guess I'd like to, since I can't see anybody, I'd like to ask if there are any questions at this point before I just talk a little bit more about this process.
I have a question for everybody in the room. How many people, there's about a dozen people here, Sarah, how many people in this room have ever built software with a software company themselves? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's a 4, a little bit. Okay. One person just wiggled his fingers rather than raising his hand. So it's a very deliberative, and chime in here, Sarah, if you want to. It's a very deliberative, extremely thoughtful process where you have to walk through in your mind and with your software developer everything you think about and everything you need information to do, and the order and arrangement of that information and those actions. And then you build the proper database to hold the information and the proper program to access that information so that it serves your business purposes. It's a very intellectual process. Do you want to add to that or correct me, Sarah? Did I get that right?
You did. You got that right. That is correct. There is a long time that is spent relative to the project doing the discovery and the solution architecture. In fact, in smaller projects, sometimes the discovery and solution architecture phase takes longer than the actual implementation, because it's the understanding of the need and it's the mapping out that need into the solution that is the most important part of the process. Absolutely. So along those lines, these are kind of our artifacts that we will be delivering as part of this project. Go ahead, Catherine.
No, I just wanted to quickly say that that on top of what you've just described and what I've described, we've got a research database underneath it as well, so that we can gather a lot of data and learn from it in the future. So go ahead, Sarah. I just want to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. So from this project, the artifacts that will come from it are, which are deliverables that we provide, are first a requirements matrix. So this is going to list out every single requirement that we know of that we gather during our discovery process, which is, you know, a set of interviews with all of the stakeholders, all of the subject matter experts, looking over all the documentation, doing a deep dive in the existing platform. We'll come up with a requirements matrix that will, in this case, probably be in the like 350 to 500 requirements range based on the size of project. We will do business process flows for some of the more complex processes, like driver onboarding, for example. We will have actual process flows that we will write out that will kind of show every step in some of the more complex processes. We will develop what's commonly referred to as a data model, which is basically the diagram of the database and how all of the different pieces of the database are going to relate to each other. We're going to create a data dictionary, which is going to be for that database, what is every piece, down to the different field of data in the database, what are all of the different pieces of data that are going to be stored in this database, and what are the specifications for them? Are they required fields? Are they numbers? Are they dates? What is the length? That sort of thing. So it's a really technical document that allows us to do the configuration in Salesforce. And then the last deliverable of the discovery and solution architecture phase is the customization spec. And this is a big document that basically includes every piece of functionality that isn't going to be able to be covered by Salesforce's point and click configuration. They have an open programming platform that is part of Salesforce, that is built into it. It is not separate. So there's no integration required. You build on that system, but you can build anything you want on that system. You can build web applications that look nothing like they've come from Salesforce because they're customized. And so this spec is going to be all the pieces that we're going to be customizing, like the portals, for example. It will list every single item and how long we think it's going to take to do, with an estimate for the implementation. And then at that point, we're going to do a final scoping exercise. We'll have already done scoping exercises after the requirements matrix and after the data dictionary, and then we'll do another scoping exercise after the customization spec, where we'll all agree on what we're definitely building for phase 1. And then what we're thinking will come in subsequent phases or just pushed out to be later. So that's at that point we'll do that. And then there are guides, processes, and training materials that will come closer to the end of the project that we'll be using. Questions? Does anybody have any questions?
This is more of a comment than a question, but when I had to deal with software development, it was not a particularly successful development. And after it was all over and thinking about it, it failed because of discovery, what you call discovery, and simply didn't get done adequately. It was done very poorly. And they really didn't understand the system that they were building for, that they didn't have any understanding. And so your next step, your step 2, which was the process flow diagrams, strikes me as being particularly critical, so that the ITN folks can see that you do in fact understand what goes on at ITN and what they want, and they can actually see that diagrammed out, how your understanding will then translate into software. So I think you've got to, we used to call what you call discovery, we used to call it task analysis. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that term gets used much anymore. And so I think you've covered this very, very well, and I'm very encouraged that you'll come up with a very viable product.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for saying that. And that is one of the failures that, I've been in software development for, I don't know, I won't date myself, but probably at least 25 years now, between writing the software myself and then doing this side of the work. And you cannot, you really can't underestimate how important the discovery is. And that's what we always wind up having to, convince people, because if they haven't been through it and haven't had the experience that you've had, then they think, well, why are you taking all of this time? We want to see something. Why are you taking all this time to understand our business before you even build anything? We need something sooner. And a lot of times people will go choose a different vendor, go away, and come back 8 months or a year later and say, you know what, I think we do need that discovery. Let's do this right this time. And we try to convince people to do it right the first time, but sometimes people just have to learn that lesson. If you don't have people who understand your business better than you do, that's what a lot of our clients say, is that we understand their business better than they do. If you don't understand their business at least as well as they do, then you're not going to build them the right software product. So thank you for pointing that out.
Anybody else have a question or a thought they want to share? Earl?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I'm looking forward to the continued discussion of how it would work with software development. Sounds great.
Good. Okay, great. I would just add that one of the opportunities I believe we'll have, and chime in here, Sarah, because we have 13 ITN affiliates up and running, some of them for over 10 years, who've been using the existing software. When it's rebuilt on Salesforce, you will have their experience in the trenches opinion as they test it and as they use it. All of the features of this technology can be used by ITN affiliates, and all of these same features are completely optional for ITN country. So they can pick and choose and do it the way it feels they can afford it, or that it suits their volunteer base, or suits their dollars, or suits the desires of their community. But it's the same technology, it's just a different part of the click down menu. Do you want to charge a fare, or do you not want to charge a fare? Do you want to just use volunteers, or do you want to use... So we will have experienced communities to test things as we're building it, which I see as a benefit. And they're you know, community-based nonprofits on their own. Does that sound right, Sarah? Am I off base or on base?
Yeah, absolutely. And that also just points to the need for having a really defined framework for user adoption and user feedback. And that's something that we also focus on. So, you know, one of the, it's a double-edged sword in some ways, because, you know, when you have, they've had kind of highly customized experiences in some cases, and they're going to be moving to a multi-tenant platform that's, for some of them, going to be less customizable. You know, if they want to make it pink, they're not going to be able to, at least not, you know, for an initial rollout. And so they're going to be able to choose their feature sets, but some of them have had real custom work done. And so there's going to be the feedback, you know, and there's going to be kind of a play between, you know, getting as much information as we can from them, but also understanding how to vet it and what goes into, these are things we're going to address now, and what goes into these are great ideas for later bucket. And so you need a kind of a strong framework for that feedback, so that you kind of in some ways don't drown in it. Right, so it's going to be really powerful to be able to get their experiences and their feedback into the system.
Rick?
Switching now to quality control step, does that include beta testing, but also testing, what I would call usability testing, with folks who don't know anything about the software particularly, but are more of a typical user, and that they can use it and it works for them and they can figure it out quickly and easily? You know, so basically, that when you get through with that testing, you know that the user community who's going to end up with this product will in fact be able to use it.
Yeah, and that's extremely important, right? Because that often happens when you're using software that you're like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do on this page. So, and that happens to me a lot too. So I completely understand that. So we're going to be working, so we don't actually do UI UX work. We contract that out to various design partners that we work with who are extremely talented. And so the kind of user experience part happens really early when you start working on the design for it. And so these design firms, you know, do kind of user experience testing of their design, and they incorporate that because that's kind of that is what they do, is make sure that things are usable. And then as you go through the actual QA process, so we use a firm called Ultra Testing, which is a group of people. They're an amazing group. They are a group of differently abled people. They're all on the spectrum, and they are amazing testers. And so they come at it from the, I've never seen this software before. Can I figure out how to use it as just a general user perspective? And they do a really in-depth testing of everything. And we've used them for numerous products now. They're excellent. So, you know, what doesn't work is to have people who are already familiar with the product test the product, because they're not going to see the things that other people will. So we kind of have a two-pronged approach where the design from themselves will be doing usability studies and feasibility on it. And then once they come up with the design that they feel is usable for people, after getting feedback from, you know, we'll choose a group of users that, you know, the ITN specifies who are going to be involved in the process from the start, which is really important. It won't be a group of 50 people, but, you know, you get a representative group of maybe like in the 8 to 10 person range who will be kind of part of the design from the start. And then as you go through testing, you kind of identify what the user acceptance criteria are going to be and who's going to be testing it further out as well.
Thank you. That's great.
Anybody else at all? Well, Sarah, I know it's very, very early in the morning, San Francisco. Thank you for setting your alarm early.
No problem.
If nobody else has a question, I think we can let you go and get your breakfast. Or you can stay on the line and listen, whichever you prefer.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And obviously, if there are any follow-up questions, we are available and happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you.